The Obama Presidency and Hegel's Philosophy of Right. In the early 1990s, neoconservative author Francis Fukuyama wrote The End of History and The Last Man. He was influenced by the French philosopher Kojivi's interpretation of Hegel's phenomenology of spirit. Kojivi believed that history ended with Napoleon's victory at Jena in 1807. Feudal autocracy was defeated by the new army of liberal democracy. Fukuyama saw 1989 and the fall of the socialist republics of Eastern Europe as the end of history. No longer could any force rise to challenge liberal democracy. The 1990s, in some sense, confirmed this thesis, with no major power arising to challenge the Washington Consensus. But clearly history has not ended. Liberal democracy has not been able to meet all of its own objectives. Even if it could it truly create stasis? Hegel's philosophy of right is a work of reconciliation. It does the reverse of Plato's Republic. Hegel starts from the pure form of utopia and then ends with the concrete content of the actually existing world. Hegel started with property, which he saw as the assertion of individuality. The only way to truly own property, however, is to dispose of it. It is only when you transfer property to someone else that your claim to it is truly recognized. From the contract emerges the possibility of wrong and then justice. Justice enters into the realm of morality and ethics. But ethics cannot exist as an abstract sort, but must enter into this world. Hegel starts with the family. The family is the objective representation of civil society and justice. The family is dissolved and emerges as civil society, which is the family writ large. Ultimately, Hegel ends with the state. The modern state embodies the general will in institutions and corporations. The citizen no longer enjoys the direct rule he had under Athenian democracy. Direct democracy is submerged into the representative state. In direct democracy, in Athens, there was complete reconciliation between the citizen and the state. There was a feeling that the citizen was the state and the state was the citizen, a complete identity of state and person. That is, in Hegel's opinion, restored in the modern state through the institutions and the person of the executive. Because only a person, an individual executive, can represent the will of the people, because the people is a collection of individuals, of subjects. And so in the executive, there's a union, a unity between subject and object. Now, we should come to the modern state, the 21st century state, the United States, and the presidency of Barack Obama. Does the presidency of Barack Obama represent the reconciliation of the American state? America has always been a nation of contradictions. The Republic of free white landowners was built on the backs of the poor, Native Americans, Africans, slaves, Asian and Latino immigrants, and oppressed colonial peoples. And yet, that does not negate the genuine freedoms of the white republic. Hegel, more than most, would understand the cunning of reason that employed tyranny in the service of liberty. And now we see freedom at last asserting its completed mission. American electoral politics has since the late 19th century been less representative and more conservative than the other democracies. But when will the day come when our enlightened European cousins elect an Algerian Muslim president of France, a Turk president of Germany, or a South Asian prime minister of Britain? Who could have imagined in the dark days of 2002, 2003, and 2004 that a black son of a Kenyan Muslim could be elected president, commander-in-chief of the United States in 2008? That North Carolina, Virginia, the capital of the old Confederacy, Indiana, which in the 1920s was openly ruled by the Ku Klux Klan, all voted for Barack Obama. In a Hegelian sense, the 2008 election was like Antigone, a battle of right against right. The Republican Party chose the best representation of its right it could muster. McCain was not George W. Bush. He presented himself as a man of honor, a man against torture. He claimed to represent the Republican Party of Abe Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt. It is all the more significant that Obama's victory was over the conservative version of decency, and not a Bush, a Thompson, a Giuliani, or a Romney. Just as it was necessary for the Republican candidate to be relatively untainted in order to represent the conservative right, it was necessary for Obama to be quote-unquote tainted to represent the progressive right. The Jeremiah Wright and Bill Ayers scandals made clear that the world historical change brought by Obama was indeed one of world ideas and not content alone. Can we be reconciled to the Obama state? Certainly, all the old horrors and nightmares of the old world continue to haunt us. The Second Great Depression only underscores this point. And yet, in the history of spirit, this is a sea change. Does the personality of Obama realize the subjective aspirations of those who campaigned and voted for him? For the first time, we had an election in which individuals emerged their personality in the movement. Does the presidency of Barack Obama represent a unity of subject and object? Martin Luther King wrote his doctor's thesis on his interpretation of Hegelian dialectical logic. Dr. King said that he had seen the mountaintop, and while he himself could not accompany them, his people would reach the promised land. Have we reached the promised land? The true reconciliation to our age is not the end of history, but the genuine start of history. If race no longer poisons this land, it will not mean the end of historical narrative, but the beginning of more meaningful historical times.